space for conversation around women's health through the lens of naturopathic and Eastern medicine. I am Sandi Ross, and this is Her Earth Medicine Podcast. This podcast is multi-leveled. Episodes for patient education to graduate practitioner level. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you gain value from this episode. Hi everyone, I just wanted to make a quick podcast. I actually was just interviewed for a podcast, the Wholesome Fertility podcast, and we were chatting about foods for fertility using traditional Chinese dietetics. And so if you want to listen to the whole episode, go and check that one out over on the Wholesome Fertility podcast. But what I thought I would do is maybe just do a little list of a few things that I think are really important to understand when you're looking at food for fertility from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective. So let's just start off with understanding a little bit about traditional Chinese dietetics. And the difference between the Western world of nutrition is they look at macronutrients and micronutrients, which are your fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, and your vitamins and minerals. So in Chinese medicine, we actually don't even go into any of this. It's not important, and it's not even something that they discuss. But what they do is they go into the energetics of the foods, and so the temperatures of the foods, the flavors of the foods, these are all the things that they're looking at that are really important, and what organ it actually supports and what channel it goes into. And so to give you like an idea, an example of that, it might mean that, you know, if you eat a banana, for example, it's actually very sweet, isn't it? And so the flavor for a banana is sweet. If you're eating a lime, it's quite sour, and so the flavor for the lime is sour, and that's associated with the wood element. So I'll touch a little bit about the 5 elements quickly. And so we have the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, which is fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And so the organs to go with the fire element are your heart and your small intestine, and two organs we call the pericardium and the sanjiao. The flavor for the fire element, so the foods that are going to stimulate and enhance the fire element, and those organs are bitter foods, and the color is red. So any foods that you think of that are red and bitter are actually going to be really beneficial, like your berries and your cherries. Bitter greens are really good. A little bit of coffee is actually good because it's bitter in flavor, and your dandelion greens. And so the emotion with fire is joy, and so if someone's lacking joy in their life, they might actually need to eat a little bit more bitter foods to help to enhance the capacity of the fire element. And the next organ down, next element down is the earth element, and that is yellow, and the organs associated with earth are spleen and stomach. So this is a really important element for our digestion because it hosts those amazing organs that stoke our digestive fire and keep our metabolism going. So the earth element likes warm and cooked foods, and it loves yellow root vegetables like carrot and sweet potato and all your earth, like things that are grown in the earth. Squash is another great one, and pumpkin. So all those lovely root vegetables. The flavor is sweet, and so sweet foods are going to be really tonifying for the earth element. But when I say sweet, I mean sweet like, you know, those root vegetables are sweet in flavor. And like dried fruits and fruits are going to be sweet. I'm not talking about refined sugars and a chocolate bar and soft drinks. They're actually going to drain and cause dampness in the earth element and cause things like phlegm and leukorrhea and bloating and fatigue and, you know, tired legs from that TCM perspective. So we can eat something in excess and that can drain the organ and the element, or we can eat something in small amounts to help with tonification. So we want to eat all those root vegetables and have like a nice warm sort of cooked diet to help support the earth element. The next element down is your metal element, and the color is white. The flavor is pungent and acrid. So a great example is your garlic and onion. So they're white, and they're also that kind of a little bit spicy when you eat them as well. So that little bit of acridness. And then things like potatoes and leek, even cauliflower, apples and pears are all really good foods for the metal element. The emotion of the metal element is actually grief. So when someone is grieving, and this does happen a lot with, fertility or lots of different things people have grief for, it is actually really beneficial to eat those foods to help strengthen the large intestine and the lungs. The next element over is our water element. And the emotions are fear and anxiety that come with the water element, and they are connected to the kidneys and the bladder. And so you think of someone when they're really, frightened, they might wet themselves, and that's the association there. The color of the water element is black, so black foods are going to be really beneficial, as are salt, which is the flavor, salty foods. So straight away you might think of things like seaweed, it's black and it's salty, miso soup, mushroom, tahini, anything from the sea is really beneficial. And black tahini in particular is a really great one to help support and tonify the kidneys and that water element in Chinese medicine. The last element is your wood element, and that's associated with the sour flavor, and the color is green. And so your bitter greens, things like vinegar and lime, any of those green vegetables that kind of grow upwards are going to be really beneficial for the wood element. And even eating the organ meat of the liver, pâtés, is really beneficial for the wood element. So all your greens are really, really great to support your liver. And you can definitely have excess amount of the foods that can be beneficial for an element. So like I said, you really need to eat in harmony. So you don't want to eat too much sour. You don't want to eat too much, not many people eat too many sour foods, but you don't want to eat too much salty or too much sweet in your diet. You want to have a real balance between the 5 elements. So you want some bitter, you want some sour, you want some pungent, and some salty and sweet. So really look at your diet and kind of think, am I getting a varied flavor in my diet, or am I kind of overdoing the salt or the sweet foods? So in Chinese medicine, we also talk a lot about the digestive fire. And so the digestive fire is the spleen and the stomach working together to sort of keep our metabolism alight. And things that are cold and raw, things that are cold and raw can actually put out our digestive fire. And so we want to enhance, we use the term stoke the digestive fire in Chinese medicine. So foods to help really stoke the digestive fire are going to be, number 1, cooked and warm foods. And you can use things like cinnamon and ginger and garlic, and your beautiful spices to help keep that fire going and being nice and warm for the body. The emotional associations with eating is really important as well. So like I said before, there's an emotion to go with every element. And so, for example, if you're really worried or you're studying a lot, because the studying is actually in your head, and then it drains our spleen energy, which is associated with the earth element, and the flavor is sweet. So you might then start craving more sweet foods. And so if you're overdoing the sweet foods, you're going to drain the energy of that earth element, and it's not going to be beneficial. It can create then like pathogenesis in the body, such as, bloating or digestive complaints or weakness in the body. And so you want to switch from having those kind of foods that are going to be quick burning sources of fuel, like the sugars, to more like warm and cooked, beautiful desserts and stuff like that. So you might do like an apple crumble, for example, with cream, or dried fruits for a snack, versus things that are refined and going to be quick burning fuel sources. And if you think of that digestive fire, and that's our metabolism and our ability to break down food, if you go and put fuel in that fire, it's going to burn really big really quick, and then it's going to shrivel up. So throwing fuel in the fire is like putting refined sugars in the diet, versus putting things with fiber in there. They're going to be slower to digest, like your root veggies or your fruit with actual fiber in there, even dried fruit, and adding things with fats as well is going to help to release the sugars a lot slower. And so you think of putting a log on the fire, and that's what's happening when you're using those more complex carbs versus those quick burning fuels. And so that's a really nice way to help sustain energy and to keep that digestive fire going, which is really important for our transformation and transportation of all the fluids in our body and our energy. It's really important with Chinese dietetics to consider mindful eating, and so making sure you're calm, you're breathing, and you're not rushing your food is so important when you're eating. I can't emphasize that enough. I know I always talk about it, but it is probably the first thing you need to do before you do anything else. But now to talk about a few little foods that might be beneficial for your fertility. So bone broth, obviously, it's become like a world famous, let's just say that. I'm a big fan of bone broth, but I'm actually a fan of not doing it for too long. So not a 48 hour, not a 24 hour, more like an 8 hour broth, just because I find a lot of associations with people with, endometriosis or histamine problems. As the longer you cook it, the more histamines, which is an amino acid that can kind of trigger a reaction in the body, can come out. So soup stocks and bone broths, 4 to 6 hours soup stocks or 8 hour bone broths are a really great food to help enhance your fertility. And you can throw into your broths or stocks, you can throw herbs in there. So you can actually go to the Chinese grocer and you can buy these little soup mixes, and they actually say things on there like, go and ask the people at the Chinese grocer for fertility enhancing soup packet mix, and they'll give it to you, and it's all the beautiful herbs, and then you just throw it in the cooker and cook it up. It does change the flavour, so just start with a few of the herbs. Don't throw the whole packet in there or you're going to not like me very quickly, because they are very strong in flavour. But there's things like goji berries and red Chinese dates in the mix, so they make it nice and sweet and delicious. So you could try and consume, a cup of soup every day or every second day, or try and include that in your diet. That's going to be really great to help support and enhance fertility. Black tahini is a great food to also start putting in your diet, as are all your spices like cinnamon and ginger, and nutmeg. All those kind of warming spices are great to start throwing in your porridge in the morning, and not overdoing it, not having an extreme amount of these, because then you could create too much heat in the body. It's more about just using those, food as medicine, just adding flavor back into your food and using spices, because they have so many benefits. As do all your herbs. So your fresh herbs on top of food or sprouts on top of food are going to give you all these great flavors that are pungent. They're going to help with that metal element. And they're going to give you a lot of things like folic acid and all these great nutrients that are really supportive for fertility. Another great food is just having porridge with red Chinese dates, and you can put some chia seeds in there for your fatty acids. The red Chinese dates are one of the best foods actually to support kind of the spleen and the blood building, and porridge is really neutral and warm to just help and to digest really easy. So if you want to get more protein, you could throw a nice vegan protein in there, and that's a really great little food to have. Starches are really important, so I would really emphasize on having lots of your root vegetables back in the diet. So if you've been kind of carb conscious, getting them back in and consuming your root veggies are really important. Not only do they give you starches, which are really beneficial prebiotics to help your beneficial gut bacteria, but most of them are very tonifying for that earth element, so that helps to build the blood and the qi in the body. Fish and foods with essential fatty acids are going to be really beneficial as well. So things like your chia seeds and walnuts, avocado, hemp seeds, spirulina, and the seafoods are going to be beneficial because they give you those great fatty acids. So I'm a big fan of trying to rotate and making sure you're getting, if you are eating seafood, locally smaller fish if you can, so that there's going to be less heavy metals in there. And then making sure you're getting a great variety of food. So don't just eat the same thing all the time. The body likes variety and it likes to have a mix up. And the gut actually thrives, the bacteria in the gut thrive on having different foods exposed to them and giving them different fuel sources. So making sure you are kind of not sticking to the same thing every week is really important for not only supporting your ability to not get food intolerances, but to enhance and actually give the food for your gut bacteria to thrive. Meat is a very quick way of building blood. So if you've seen a TCM practitioner and you've been diagnosed with a blood deficiency, so that might be kind of weak menses or delayed menses period. You might have floaters in the eye, you might feel a little bit dizzy, you might have weak digestion, you might be tired. These are kind of symptoms that we associate with blood deficiency in Chinese medicine. And so if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, it's something to consider. Maybe you need to start having eggs back in the diet, or if you can have a bit of bone broth or maybe a bit of fish. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was vegetarian for 7 years. I've been lecturing for 5 years and practitioner for 13 years. And I've definitely seen the difference when people shift foods from being a vegan to eating other foods. And I'm not here to offend anyone or to say you need to do anything, but I'm just saying if you want your conception journey to happen quicker, sometimes you do need to have a bit more protein and those blood-building foods in the diet. Other blood-building foods, so red meat is great, white meat is great, legumes, your dark leafy green vegetables are great for being blood-building, beetroot's another one, or your root vegetables, and your red Chinese dates another great one to have in there. Foods that are really good for the spleen, which is that digestive fire, I'm just going to touch on again, is getting rid of those damp foods out of the diet, like dairy and sugars and stuff, because they really do weaken that digestive ability, and that means you don't metabolize and absorb everything to your full capacity, which is so important when we're trying to look at fertility. We then want to increase our warm foods, so not having too much cold and raw foods, and no iced drinks, and not having raw salads for lunch every day, and just getting root vegetable salads in there and adding spices to it, and maybe some grains in there like quinoa to sort of change the energy. It's not now just a cold celery, tomato, lettuce salad. It's got some root veggies, some spices, and some cooked grains in there. And just try not to serve things cold out of the fridge is also another really great tip. If you are going to have some fruit, that is so fine. I'm not saying you can't have anything cold and raw, but I'm saying try not to serve things cold out of the fridge. That is really harsh on your digestive fire, and it will put it out quite a bit. So yeah, there's just a few things to really consider from a TCM dietetics perspective when we're looking at foods for fertility. It's really important to look at your emotional association with food as well. If you are eating something and not feeling good about it, that is going to stress your body and you're not going to digest it. So make sure you mindfully eat and you take a few really big, deep belly breaths before you consume your food, and you're feeling intuitive with the food you're eating is really good for your body. If it's not, probably don't eat it. You need to tune in and listen to yourself. Your body knows the most. And just enjoy eating food. Don't diet label yourself unless you have some sort of food intolerance. And just get an abundance of everything in the diet and keep it slightly warm and mindfully eat. And that's probably the best thing I can say to help support TCM dietetics for fertility. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and be sure to subscribe to the pod and leave a review if you enjoyed this.
Thank you for listening. I have been a practitioner of naturopathic and Chinese medicine for over a decade. I have a master's degree of health science, and I am an academic lecturer at Australia's leading natural medicine college. I am available worldwide online for bookings. Simply go to sandirosshealth.com.